Hey there, it's JoJo the Thrifty Teacher here to read another book. I just had to put my hair up. I just did the haul for the thrift store video, and I was like, I'm getting hot. Full transparency, I sometimes I eat in the car, right? So I had gone to the grocery store, blah blah blah, and I got some chicken and I was eating in the car, and I don't know if it's the grease or the water, but it spilled down the front. You know when you have like those grease stains? So I just turned my shirt around to do the video because I've had some stomach issues since Thursday. In my other video, I said I probably got sick from a kid at summer school, and I just don't want to be running up and down the stairs when I've had some tummy issues the last couple days, and I'm finally feeling good. I still have what we call the bubble guts, but I'm just lazy, okay? So let's get into it. I'm going to continue reading My Father's Dragon. Quite honestly, it's because I really like this story, but I'm still trying to finish the North, whatever book, the North, about these two little boys, teenage boys, 16-year-old boys, that are trying to get out of I want to say British Columbia, Nova Scotia. Their plane crashed. Yeah. So I'm trying to get through that. So I'm like, let's just read this together so I can get through that. My Father Finds the River. Chapter 4. The jungle began just beyond a narrow strip of beach, thick, dark, damp, scary jungle. My father hardly knew where to go, so he crawled under a wahoo bush to think and ate tangerines. The first thing to do, he decided, was to find the river because the dragon was tied somewhere along its bank. Then he thought, if the river flows into the ocean, I ought to be able to find it quite easily if I just walk along the beach far enough. So my father walked until the sun rose and he was quite far from the ocean rocks. It was dangerous to stay near them because they might be guarded in the daytime. He found a clump of tall grass and sat down. Then he took off his rubber boots and ate 3 more tangerines. He could have eaten 12, but he hadn't seen any tangerines on this island, and he could not risk running out of something to eat. My father slept all day that day and only woke up late in the afternoon when he heard a funny little voice saying, "Queer, queer, what a dear little dock. I mean, dear, dear, what a queer little rock." My father saw a tiny paw rubbing itself on his backpack. He lay very still, and the mouse, for it was a mouse, hurried away muttering to itself, "I must smell Tum Duddy. I must tell somebody." That's so cute. My father waited a few minutes and then started down the beach because it was almost dark now, and he was afraid the mouse really would tell somebody. He walked all night, and 2 scary things happened. First, he had just had to sneeze, so he did, and somebody close by said, "Is that you, Monkey?" My father said, "Yes." Then the voice said, "You must have something on your back, Monkey." And my father said, "Yes," because he did. He had his knapsack on his back. "What do you have on your back, Monkey?" asked the voice. My father didn't know what to say because what would a monkey have on its back, and how would it sound telling someone about it if it did have something. Just then another voice said, "I bet you're taking your sick grandmother to the doctor's." My father said, "Yes," and he hurried on. Quite by accident, he found out later that he had been talking to a pair of tortoises. The second thing happened was that he nearly walked right between 2 wild boars who were talking in low, solemn whispers. When he first saw the dark shapes, he thought they were boulders. Just in time, he heard one of them say, "There are 3 signs of a recent invasion. First, fresh tangerine peels were found under the wahoo bush near the ocean rocks. Second, a mouse reported an extraordinary rock some distance from the ocean rocks, which upon further investigation simply wasn't there. However, more fresh tangerine peels were found in..." Look at the little mouse. Shouldn't have left his tangerine peels. "Were found in the same spot, which is the third side of an invasion. Since tangerines do not grow on our island, someone must have brought them across the ocean rocks from the other island, which may or may not have something to do with the appearance and or disappearance of the extraordinary rock reported by the mouse." After a long silence, the other boar said, I think we're taking all this too seriously. Those peels probably floated over here all by themselves, and you know how unreliable mice are. Besides, if there has been an invasion, I would have seen it." "Perhaps you're right," said the first boar. "Shall we retire?" Whereupon they both trundled back into the jungle. Well, that taught my father a lesson, and after that he saved all his tangerine peels. He walked all night, and toward morning came to the river. Then his troubles really began. Chapter 5, My Father Meets Some Tigers. Look at the cover. The very river was very wide and muddy, and the jungle was very gloomy and dense. The trees grew close to each other, and what room there was between them was taken up by great high ferns with sticky leaves. My father hated to leave the beach, but he decided to start along the riverbank, where at least the jungle wasn't quite so thick. He ate 3 tangerines, making sure to keep all the peels this time, and put on his rubber boots. My father tried to follow the riverbank, but it was very swampy, and as he went farther, the swamp became deeper. When it was almost as deep as his boot tops, he got stuck in the oozy, mucky mud. My father tugged and nearly pulled his boots right off, but at last he managed to wade to a drier place. Here the jungle was so thick that he could hardly see where the river was. He unpacked his compass and figured out the direction he should walk in order to stay near the river. But he didn't know that the river made a very sharp curve away from him just a little way beyond, and so as he walked straight ahead, he was getting further and further away from the river. It was very hard to walk in the jungle. The sticky leaves of the ferns caught on my father's hair, and he kept tripping over roots and rotten logs. Sometimes the trees were clumped so closely together that he couldn't squeeze between them and had to walk the long way around. Wow, that must be really close. He began to hear whispery noises, but he couldn't see any animals anywhere. The deeper into the jungle he went, the surer he was that something was following him, and then he thought he had heard whispery noises on both sides of him as well as behind. He tried to run, but he tripped over more roots, and the noises only came nearer. Once or twice he thought he heard something laughing at him. At last he came into a clearing and ran right into the middle of it so that he could see anything that might try to attack him. Was he surprised when he looked and saw 14 green eyes coming out of the jungle all around the clearing, and when the green eyes turned into 7 tigers. The tigers walked around him in a big circle, looking hungrier all the time, and then he sat down and began to talk. I suppose you thought we didn't know you were trespassing in our jungle. Then the tiger spoke. I suppose you're going to say you didn't know it was our jungle? Did you know that not one explorer has ever left this island alive, said the third tiger. My father thought of the cat and knew this wasn't true, but of course he had too much sense to say so. One doesn't contradict a hungry tiger. The tigers went on talking in turn. You're our first little boy, you know. I'm curious to know if you're especially tender. Maybe you think we have regular meal times, but we don't. We just eat whenever we're feeling hungry, said the 5th tiger. And we're very hungry right now. In fact, I can hardly wait, said the 6th. I can't wait, said the 7th tiger. And then all the tigers said together in a loud roar, Let's begin now, and they moved closer. My father looked at those 7 hungry tigers, and then he had an idea. He quickly opened his knapsack and took out the chewing gum. The cat had told him that tigers were especially fond of chewing gum, which was very scarce on the island. So he threw them each a piece, but they only growled. As fond as we are of chewing gum, we'd like you even better. And then they moved closer so that I could feel them breathing on his face. But this is a very special chewing gum, said my father. If you keep on chewing it long enough, it will turn green, and then if you plant it, it will grow more chewing gum, and the sooner you start chewing, the sooner you'll have more. The tiger said, Why, you don't say. Isn't that fine? And as each one wanted to be the first to plant the chewing gum, they all unwrapped their pieces and began chewing as hard as they could. Every once in a while, one tiger would look into another's mouth and say, Nope, it's not done yet, until finally they were all so busy looking into each other's mouths that they forgot mouths to make sure that no one was getting ahead of each other, that they forgot all about my father. That's cute. Oh, the next chapter is My Father Meets a Rhinoceros. That's so cute. I really, really like the imagination in that story, and I really like how if you wanted to bring another subject into it, you could do science and do like habitats, because that would be so cool to get on the internet and like Google Earth, the jungle, or some of the animals and have them do like mini projects with them or stuff like that. That would be a lot of fun to do. The next one I'm only going to read part of is Snow White and Rose Red. This one I am listing because it goes for good money. I really like the illustrations. This belonged to Jodie Fleetwood at some point. Will you please read it to me? Aww. When was this written? 1978, a year after I was born. Once upon a time, on the edge of a great forest, there lived a widow and her 2 young daughters, Snow White and Rose Red. In front of the door of their little cottage, 2 beautiful rose bushes grew. Snow White was as pale and delicate as the white roses that bloomed on one bush. Rose Red was her crimson cheeks, was like the dark red roses that blossomed on the other. That's kind of neat. It's pretty scenery. In summertime, the two sisters played for hours in the woods, but their mother never worried about them. Rabbits nibbled carrots from their fingers, and birds settled on their shoulders. All the wild creatures of the forest were their friends. The sisters were a great help to their mother. They kept the cottage floor scrubbed clean and the hearth swept free of ashes. The brass and copper pans on the shelf gleamed as bright as the full moon. During the long, cold winter months, the sisters liked nothing better than sitting by the fireside and listening to stories their mother read aloud. Late one cold and snowy night, as the north wind howled around the cottage, there came a knocking at the door. "Perhaps some poor traveler stands shivering outside," said the widow. Look at Snow White. She is a bird, and she's like, la 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 la. They got lots of kittens. Snow White quickly unbolted the door, but instead of a man in a long traveling coat, a great brown bear stuck his head into the cottage. Snow White and Red Rose were terrified, but their mother opened the door. "Do not be frightened," said the bear in a friendly voice. "I just want to warm myself by the fire." Yeah, if they're friends with all the animals, shouldn't they not discriminate against this big old bear? When the gentle brown beast came into the cottage and lay down by the fire, Snow White and Rose Red lost their fear. They swept the snow off his coat with their brooms. Soon they were romping and playing with him, rolling him about like an overgrown puppy. At bedtime, the widow said, "You may sleep by our fire, good bear, but be careful not to burn your coat." Snow White and Rose Red kissed their new friend goodnight and climbed into their beds. The next morning, the bear was gone, but every night from that time on, he returned to the cottage at the same hour. Snow White and Rose Red were always waiting for him. Together, the three played happily. If the sisters were rough or pulled his ears too hard, the bear would say, "Do not hurt me, Snow White and Red Rose, or your true husbands will never wed. You'll never wed." As the girls laughed, for they didn't know what he meant. Finally, spring came, and the bear had to return to the forest. When Snow White and Rose Red begged him to stay, he said he was going to guard his treasure from the wicked gnomes who lived in the woods, so they sadly waved goodbye. Snow White and Rose Red missed their friends, the great brown bear. Whenever they saw a dark shadow in the woods, they hoped it might be his, but he did not come back to the cottage that spring. One morning, the girls were in the forest gathering firewood. In a distant clearing, they saw a big log on the ground. Beside it was something hopping angrily up and down. When they came closer, what they should see but a little gnome, his long white beard stuck fast in the crack of the log. Skip, skip, skip. They want to help him, and he's like, "I'll just use the scissors." Ah! And then he was trying to get a bass, but his beard got tangled up in the line and the fishing pole, and she took her scissors and cut the gnome's beard. Oh, he called them nincompoops, stupid nincompoops. And he went and got the pearls he had hidden in the grass. Autumn came, and Snow White and Rose Red were in the forest gathering brightly colored leaves when who should they see but the wicked little gnome. He was sitting on a flat rock with his treasures spread all around him. Gold, pearls, and emeralds and rubies sparkled in the sun. Oh, look at the bear behind him. All of a sudden, a great brown bear came crashing through the trees behind the little gnome. He jumped to his feet and tried to run away, but the bear blocked his path. "Spare me, Sir Bear," cried the little gnome. "I will give you back your treasure. I will even double it. Eat those two tender girls over there, but please spare me." With a fierce growl and one stroke of his mighty paw, the great brown bear sent the little gnome flying through the air. He hit the ground 100 yards away, and he never moved again. Snow White and Rose Red hid behind a rock, shivering with fear. Then they suddenly recognized their friend the bear. But just as they rushed to greet him, his rough brown bear coat dropped away, and there stood a handsome prince dressed all in gold from head to foot. That wicked little gnome stole all my treasures and turned me into a bear, said the prince. For many years I've been feared and hunted by villagers everywhere. Only you have been my friends. Now at last, by the gnome's death, I am free to return to my castle. Well, la-ti-da, I've never heard this. The prince took Snow White and Rose Red to his castle to meet his brother, the Silver Prince. In time, Snow White married the Gold Prince, and Rose Red married his brother. Oh, look at that. So she's going to marry the blonde one, and the dark-haired one's going to marry the dark-haired one. Give me a break. The widow came to live with their daughters, and she brought the 2 rose bushes with her. Perhaps they're still growing in the castle garden. The white rose and the red. Oh, and they have little babies now. I guess I did read the whole book. It's cute. That's a cute book. I'm wondering if you would compare and contrast this with Snow White. Because the gnome and the dwarves and the gnome. That would be interesting. Like Snow White, and then this might be Sleeping Beauty. But those pictures are just amazing. There you go. So those are the 2 books. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any recommendations or anything like that, let me know. I am JoJo the Thrifty Teacher. I do reselling, and I am a full-time teacher mentor to new teachers in their first and second and going into their 3rd years now. And I do reselling on the side for fun, and I really like the reselling community, and I really like reading kids' books. So again, you can, my, what do you call it? My JoJo the Thrifty Teacher is my like reselling Instagram, and then JoJo the Educator, something like that, is my regular Instagram. Hold on, let me tell you what it is exactly. JoJo Living Her Educator Life. So that's my other one. So like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you have any book recommendations. Again, I don't edit my videos because I'm just learning. And have a good day, everyone.